share my screen and I'll take it forward from there. And if anybody has got any questions, please feel free to interrupt and ask. I will not duplicate anything. I will not cover whatever Mr. Nitin has already covered for. So I will show you some specific features of Mendeley. Now, I will not be comparing between Zotero and Mendeley. It's purely based upon an individual preference of which one would you use for and why. Each one of them have got different features. The only advantage with Mendeley is that it is from elsewhere. I hope you all understand what elsewhere is. Like you've got the publishing house elsewhere. So this Mendeley is from the elsewhere. And you can create your account, use the same account, whatever you have in elsewhere as well as in Mendeley. That's a single sign-in kind of thing. So all your inclusions that you have done as part of the Mendeley is uploaded in the cloud, which is again in the elsewhere. You can connect your library from there as well. I will only go through some key specifics about what you can do as part of the reference management software. Now, if we talk about Mendeley or Zotero, these are reference management softwares, and they've got some similar features that you can look in for. Okay, for example, if I'll simply expand on whatever has been covered already. For example, if you want to look in for say based upon authors, so this will list you all the authors on here, and if you want to pick any specific one, for example, David Ecker, who's well known into the brand management, I can look for all the publications by David Ecker. Okay, similarly for each of the authors you can look for, otherwise it will show you everything. I have tons of information in it, so don't get worried about this. I've got around 3,000 documentation as part of my Mendeley library. Similarly, you can look in based upon the keywords or the tags or based upon any of the publications. Now, how this will be useful is, for example, if you want to understand what were the different papers that you have as part of the American Management Review. So you can look in for all of these, okay, for a specific journal that it will show you. And similarly, say, if you want to have something, say marketing intelligence and planning, or marketing letters, or International Journal of Information Management, which is an A-star journal, or MISQ, you can look for each specifics and then you can say list down all of those as part of it. Okay, that's one. Other thing, what you can also do as part of here is, of course, you can create folders, multiple subfolders and all. You can also create some of the favorites here. If you go into the documentation, let me choose all instead of a specific one. Okay, you can, it has got all those combinations in here. The first one is for the favorites, unfavorites, what are read, unread. So you can keep working on each one of them. It also has got these tags. The tags are very useful whenever you want to cite them as part of a document. For example, if I have a Word document, there is a slight difference when you want to cite this as part of your Word in the plugin. Zotero has got a separate menu bar, whereas for Mendeley it goes within references. You can cite, it creates this kind of plugin for the Mendeley. You can insert a citation. You can just type in, for example, if you want to cite my paper, it lists down all of this. I can do it based upon the name. I can do it based upon title of the paper, or I can, if I am not very sure, I can go to Mendeley, and from Mendeley I can cite it here. For example, I do it like this, the first one. Okay. Similarly, if I have another one. Now I have multiple papers like this. What I can also do is I can merge them if I've got multiple ones like this. It takes care of from these perspectives. So typically you don't have to worry about, you have done it once, edit and then redo it. These are some good features that the reference management software offers for. And similarly, for inserting any of the references in here, just click on the bibliography. It creates the reference section. And typically what we do is, as part of, if we have a thesis, there would be approximately around 250 plus references that you have. Similarly, if you are writing any research paper, then you could have something around 100 plus in each of them. And if you are creating a paper like an SLR or a meta-analysis, then the number of papers could be huge depending upon the type of work that you have undertaken here. So different journals have got different formatting styles, and what Mr. Neeraj mentioned is that we typically use an APA formatting style as far as in India it's concerned in social sciences. But when you're submitting this into different journals would have different requirements. For example, Emerald might use Harvard style. So how do you change from one style to the other style quickly without having to redo a lot of these things? So what I have done is I simply changed the style here by choosing it. So it has reformatted everything into this. So what this style indicates is the name of the paper is in double quotes, whereas if I choose an APA style, it is not. Okay, if I go to APA edition 7, the style is different. So it has changed here as well as it has changed here as well, the way it is being referenced or cited within a document. So these kind of things can be done easily and quickly with the reference management software. Okay. Now the other thing is a word of caution whenever you're working with any of the reference management softwares. I'll give you a typical example. Say, if I'm citing one of my paper, so you all are familiar with what is an in-text, end-text citations and all?
They are. They know it. In-text and other reference how to cite it. They are aware of it.
In-text citations, end-text citations. Are you familiar with these kind of citations, everyone? It's not for Mr. Nitin or me, Dr. Meena Kumari or Dr. Ramesh to talk about it. It should be from the research scholars who are there in the call.
Yes, sir, we are.
You could just mention it. You know, the end note, footnote, and other things.
Okay, so if I'm writing some paragraph, say mobile banking is defined as, I write something, okay, then what I do is at the end of it, if I want to cite something, this becomes an in-text citation. Okay, now always remember it is not a simple copy and paste. You need to do a complete one if you're doing a copy paste so that it retains all the information. Now, how do you find this? Is simply if you go into an edit field, it will show you a lot of those citations, or if you do a toggle field code, you'll find all the metadata embedded into this, which we normally don't see. And so you could make use of such kind of information, whether you have got it correctly copied in here or not. Other thing what you need to remember is whenever you are doing any citation, for example, it was defined by, if you do like this by, then you say as an option. I'm just typing something, okay, I'm not clearly defining it. The banking available on 24/7 basis, okay, with no temporal constraints. I'm just giving this. Okay, so when you're doing it in-text citation, in this case, the bracket should not be there. So how it is cited is, it should be the name without a comma. It should be cited like this. As soon as you do this, we have done a manual edit. It asks, it gives a confirmation. It checks for whether you really want to manually edit this kind of citation. Otherwise, what would happen is whenever there are changes, it will not do it automatically. So any manual changes that you have made as part of the document, you have to make sure that you understand these. So any of the in-text citations specifically that you do as part of your documentation has to be taken into consideration accordingly. So I say I keep manual edit. So in this case, I still have this, which is cited appropriately, because at the end of the day, what we need to have is it should all be in the bibliography section or in the reference section. It should be updated here, and that needs to happen. Okay, otherwise it'll go off. Okay, for example, I think you all are familiar with a paper of, say, a TAM model of Davis, 1989. Okay, if I do this, so as soon as I do it, it gets sorted. So any additions or deletions I do, it keeps updating the references as well as It makes sure that it is sorted. For example, if I remove this, if I remove the citation, I just need to go back and refresh it.
Or you can click the refresh button right above.
Okay, yeah, that's all I need to do. So it takes care of from this perspective. As soon as I add something, it gets added on. Whenever I remove the citations, if it is no longer cited in anywhere within the document, because again, you need to remember this, a thesis which will be broken down into multiple chapters, and it will be broken down into multiple sections, subsections. You need to make sure that everything is collated and consolidated in one place, and that's where the reference management software helps you. Similarly, for the research papers, or if you are working on something like an SLR and meta-analysis, it's huge. And if you do have any questions related to SLR or meta-analysis, I'm more than happy to answer them, because I do have papers related to each of them as well. The other features that you can do as part of the Mendeley, apart from what we cite. Okay, before I go into the Mendeley tool, any questions from what we have done as part of the citation in a document? Any questions? Either say yes or no. If you're silent, I can't make out anything.
No, I think you have to assume no questions. Go ahead.
Professor, is the method to upload the same as Zotero?
What do you mean by method to upload?
In Zotero, what we did is there was a save to Zotero, from a PDF and from Word on the plugin, as Mr. Nitin was saying, from the plugin. We could directly cite if it was there already there. So is the system in Zotero, if we were to have a file the same?
When you say file, what do you mean by? Are you talking about uploading into the tool, or you're talking about creating a reference in Microsoft Word?
Uploading a file
Uploading a file in like Zotero, the way a PDF, if we find it.
Yeah, it's
similar.
Similar. Only thing what you do, there might be slight variations, but otherwise it's all similar. What you can do is either you can add a file, you can add a particular folder. Okay, that means if a folder has got 20 different papers, then you can simply add a particular folder in this. You can also add an entry manually. So what does manually mean is, if I create one, I can indicate what type it is, say journal article. I can give the title, the author's journal name, all this information I can include, and then I can save it. So I can do it a manual entry as well. Another feature what it has got is something as a watch folder. So typically what it means is I can create in my hard disk, I can create a particular folder and I can watch that kind of folder within the Mendeley, so that if in case I save any new research paper as part of my folder, that gets updated here automatically. That is done automatically. But other thing what it also has is, if I want to manually add any of the paper, so for example, I can do it from here, add files, or I can go to my particular folder as well, wherein don't get bogged down with the kind of information I have into this. I've got thousands of papers with me. So if I, for example, if I just choose any one of the ANN paper, say I have this particular paper which was in, say, Journal of Retail, okay, this paper. So I can simply drag and drop it. It creates an entry here. Now, how does it create? Based upon the metadata. And then it also gives a warning message saying we found 43 other PDF folders. Would I like to review them for import? That means it gives this kind of suggestion. Within this folder, I've got total 67 items, but it has found that there are 43 other PDF files that is not existing within the Mendeley desktop. So it gives an option. I can review it. And I can pick and choose which one do I need to import in this. If I don't need, I can just say no. Or I can pick and choose on this and say, okay, a specific ones, I can uncheck them. So there are various such kind of options that I can look in for about what is to be included and what. The other options are like recently added. This is what I added now. Okay, so if I don't want, I can simply remove them. So I can have my own favorites into this. Other thing is Now, this is another good option. So whenever we are actually any method that we use in order to include a particular file in the Mendeley, be it Mendeley or be it Zotero, the methods are similar. So whenever we are including any of the research papers or making any entries in here, it goes into a kind of we are not sure about the kind of metadata it provides in. So unless and until the person confirms that yes, the details are correct, in case of Mendeley, it places under a needs review. So what I can do is I can select a particular paper and see, I can look for whether the contents are correct or not. So why is it required is because the type is correct, the title of the research paper is correct, the authors are correct. That means their names, the way they are spelled is all correct. The journal is correct. Year, volume, issue, pages. So these are the critical things which are required for citing any of the papers. The other information is not very critical. For example, the citation key is more from the individualistic point of view. How do I use it whenever I want to use in my document? The date accessed and all these are not again critical. Even the DOI is also not again critical. So even if you remove the DOI, it doesn't matter. So the information that is required to be 100% correct are all of this, and you can validate and then say yes, the details are correct. So as soon as you do details are correct, it goes back into that kind of folder. So for each of them you can review, and then before it actually validates, it can go back to that kind of it will be saved in that folder. Okay. The other thing what can also be done is I'm just adding on to whatever Mr. Nitin had done for. For example, if you want to select this particular one, I can copy it as a formatted citation. So for example, if you're asking me, let me choose this. OK, these are my different papers which are in different ABDC journals. For example, if I choose this, I say you ask me what is how do I cite your paper? I can simply copy it and it's a kind of in a text form. So I paste it here. So this is the citation for this paper. I can directly send it across to it. It's so easy. And similarly, if you want in a BibTeX form, I can also copy a BibTeX entry. OK, and it's nothing but simply like this. So BibTeX follows a different syntax and it has to be exactly written in the same way. What fields can be added, manual additions, all this can be done also by the individual if you know how it is. I know it, so I can this is a citation code followed by the author DOI. There are many additional fields that can also be added or removed based upon what the requirement is. The advantage of the BibTeX file is that it can be imported into any of the reference management softwares. So reference management software typically has got, you don't need a specific plugins and all for this. It normally uses, one is a BibTeX form, and the second is an RIS form, a .RIS. These two are common across. And nowadays there are a lot of journals. When I talk about journals, these are good journals. They would also look in for the latex citations, and these kind of commands can also be given. So instead of including all your references as part of your Word document, they might say you send me a separate latex file for the references. So the latex citation can also be given in that scenario. Okay. The rest are all similar. The other thing is, I think he has already covered about the duplicate. So only thing what I can say is, if you are selecting multiple papers like this here, it also gives an option to merge the documents. Now, which one to merge, what you need to do, you need to pick and choose about it. It will also show which files are, which of the fields are actually common across here. And accordingly, you can choose the specific ones and then merge the two documents. So for example, if you have got duplicates and you still have one in one of the entry, you've got certain information, second entry, other information. So instead of typing it again, you can merge the two documents into one and it will show as a single entity in case of Mendeley. Now, these are not duplicates, but I can easily look for. So for example, I want to if I want to search for all the duplicates, I can go into tools and check for duplicates. I've got around 1,300 out of this. It has shown the number of duplicate documents that I have, 92 sets. OK, so I can check within each one of them. So for example, in this scenario, it says, do I want to confirm? There are two of them. Anything which is common across is shown here, and it also shows when I merge them as the percentage. I don't know if I can do it. Let me give it a quick try. Okay, so it has merged both of them and it has removed it from this duplicate. So it gives the confidence level on this, right? So you can see it's actually in a descending order. Here the confidence is much higher. That means it indicates that all of them are same entries, like what we see, all the tick marks and all here. But if I go into the end of this, so the confidence level has decreased over here because there are certain fields which are not common across in both of them. Like the author's name, there is a variation or difference between these. So I can pick and choose about how do I want to, or what kind of entry do I want to keep or remove, or do I want to merge them based upon this confidence level, what it is given here. Okay. Anything else you want to know?
Yes, Professor.
Features are plenty into this. Sorry, somebody had a question.
Yeah, Ramya here. So
Yeah,
I have a couple of questions. The first one is like there was a highlight feature in Zotero which was very useful. Is the same thing in Mendeley?
Yeah, you can do that. They're similar.
And then the next one is there was a share option, right? You mentioned like whatever you open in Zotero is available in Mendeley as well.
Yeah, it can be synchronized. Mr. Nathan showed that, right? You can synchronize between the two tools.
Synchronize it. So when you share it to a couple of, say you are working as a group and you share it to your team member, both the apps together, whatever is there, will it get shared or only if you are?
No. My suggestion is always use one tool. Don't use both of them and don't expect everything will be shared amongst them.
Yeah. So I think the best thing is Zotero.
Now,
see, most of this group work will happen in the cloud if you can. So that is something which I have myself not used by and large because I am kind of working along with my guide. But if you eventually do, I think try to use the same thing. Otherwise, if you have to share, export a BibTeX file and then anybody can then import it. You can export it from Zotero, import it in Mendeley or the vice versa. So you can RIS file or a BibTeX file format and then you can move between the two. I think I actually wanted to share one thing which is.
Yeah, I'll just complete mine. I'll then give it back to you. Okay. I just stopped in for the questions and I'll just complete whatever I have in mind. I'll take another 10 minutes or so, then I'll pass it back to you. Yes, please. Any other questions?
Yeah, Professor, one more question, because we are relatively new to these tools and like, we are just starting. As you said, it is better to use one. So which one would you suggest?
That's purely based on your preferences. If you are a computer savvy, for example, I use both. And there are different instances when I would use Zotero, different instances when I would use Mendeley. I use multiple ones. I don't limit to, I've got plenty of things that I work on. For example, I'll give you an example. Predominantly for writing research papers, I would use Mendeley. Even for writing thesis, even for every practical purpose, I might use Mendeley. With Mr. Nathan, it might be different. He might use Zotero, for example. Yeah. Now, the scenario when I would use Zotero would be is, are you familiar with what an SLR is, what meta-analysis is? You're familiar with literature reviews, right?
Literature reviews, yes.
Okay, so this is something in a typical literature review. What you would do is you would collate multiple literatures and you write about it as part of your research paper or as part of your thesis, saying what the authors did. You could do a synthesis of the literatures as well, and then you can cite them. When you want to collate multiple papers together in a qualitative mode, that becomes a systematic literature review. I'm not going into too much of detail, but just to give you in a nutshell, irrespective of whether I use it or whether you use it or anybody else in the world uses it, they should produce the same number of papers using the same research, using the same search methods. And it is why is it a qualitative approach? Because once we arrive at a final figure that I want to write my inferences about, it is all done in words. There are no statistical techniques involved into it. So that's an SLR. Meta-analysis is something much beyond that. If you want to explain to you all, are you a simple one? Okay, let me draw something across. Say if I draw a simple rectangle, Okay, then what I do is I do something like, if I want to simply show how many papers are being written under each of them. So I don't have a pen, so I'm making use of this here. So okay, then I draw one more. I'll make use of this itself. And I will reduce the size. Okay, if I break this into 3 different portions, okay, what typically this means is the normal number of literatures that you would have as part of your literature review, what you do in, it will be the bottom of the pyramid. Okay, and when you go into a kind of mode as an SLR, it will be somewhere here. That means the number of papers that are actually written for an SLR will be much less compared to a normal literature review paper that you would write in for. The meta-analysis forms somewhere here. So it's a very niche area which includes statistical techniques in order to collate multiple papers together. And why is it done is primarily because when there are different studies done in different contexts with a similar or different models, theories and approaches being used in for, the results would be quite diverse. For example, if you have identified a particular independent variable and you have created a hypothesis and said it should be significant. Some studies would have found it to be significant in a certain context, and some they would have found it as a non-significant. When you do a literature review, which one of them will you take? Will you take the one which is significant or not significant? Yeah, that's where meta-analysis helps. And it does the consolidation of multiple studies and uses statistical techniques, making use of the sample size as well. There are different techniques into it. Maybe it's for another day, but that's what it is used for in order to understand about what is the appropriate way for making use of these as part of your hypothesis when you are creating one. You can't simply blindly refer to one paper and say author A or author B or author C said it has to be significant, hence in my scenario also to be significant. That's a different approach altogether. So meta-analysis is definitely something that you all should be using whenever you're doing a literature review, and much before that even you write your hypothesis. If you're not done it, I would strongly encourage that you should be doing it.
In fact, Raja, it might be useful for giving a small training on meta-analysis. In fact, I would like to get educated a little bit.
Analysis is huge. It'll have all the statistical techniques and I can do it, but I don't know how the grasping power of everybody would be. I would suggest it could be done a bit later on. Let them do some sort of at least literature review and come to a systematic level. Then probably at a different stage when they mature in, then I can get into this kind of mode. Yeah. So what was your question on? I forgot. I digressed somewhere else.
So
she was comparing these two.
Yeah.
And I will put it.
The tools. Yeah. Okay. So when I'm doing, for example, SLR or meta-analysis, in that case, I do not want to disturb the library that I already have existing with me. So this is all nothing but a library. OK, so when I add multiple papers into this, so if I go back to something here, so what I need to do is I need to do a collation in order to understand how do I systematically review these papers. So when I use my Boolean logic to search for number of papers, my initial search, OK, it could be something like 4,000 plus. But when I actually drill down in order to understand which paper should be within the scope of my either say an SLR or a meta analysis, it could just be say 30 or 40. So what do I do with each of them? So if I have my library, which is built with so many papers, then I don't have to go back and then remove them. So what I do is I've got something like, as I say, a final. So this is only the final that I have. I've listed something like 49 papers, which is part of my scope within what I did as part of SLR. So I could use, for example, Zotero for this purpose. I have Zotero in which there are many such papers broken down into multiple. For example, I'm doing this one meta-analysis, I'm doing another one. So like this, I keep breaking down into multiple research objectives based upon what I intend to do. So I can use the tools at different instances. But my recommendation is you should have a strong if you're using multiple ones, you should have a strong justification for it. My suggestion is always use one of them, any one of them. Okay, the second one that you use, you should have a justification for it. That's all. Don't get confused. There are hundreds of tools available. What we are showing is only 2. There are many more, including freewares. I've got 2 more that I can show you now also.
I think you need not confuse them.
So don't get confused with these. Use only one. Okay, your purpose is, rather than doing everything manually, you should be in a position to use some automatic method for referencing purposes, both in text as well as for your bibliography. And it should be easy for them to cite within your paper. And similarly, when you're sending it from one journal to the other, you should be able to swiftly change from one format to the other, because there are multiple things. For example, in this, if I go in for the citation styles, there are plenty of them and I use it quite often. Sorry. OK, now in this, I've got few of them which are installed. OK, and I can choose which one do I need to use. Similarly, I can get more styles. There are various journals within, it's not standardized across Emerald or even within elsewhere. They can have different journals having different formatting styles. So how do I cope up with them is based upon these. So some journals would also say this is what is the option that you can use in for whenever you're citing for. I can simply use that and then install it here, or I can install right from here as well. For example, if I want to use this particular one, I can go here and then install a particular style, or I can download the style. So there are various options that are available in here which I could use in for. Okay, so when you start writing research papers, you can start exploring, and there are a lot of these options which are available that you should be using them. Yeah. Any other questions? What else do I want to? Okay, so the kind of things what it has is favorites. I've showed about the need review. Okay, this would be all my publications would be listed in here. Again, unsorted are the ones that if you're not created any folders or subfolders, it'll be here, and you can simply pick and choose and drag and drop or use it as part of the subfolder. The other good option in this, there are few other good options that you could look in for. In the options, you can choose where do you want to organize all your files. Okay, if you want to have a copy of the files, the PDF files that you save, you can choose where do you want this. By default, it goes into the Mendeley desktop under your documents folder. If you want to sort the files rather than using the naming convention of what it uses, it can create a naming convention for you. If you choose this particular one, you can identify what should be the naming convention for the fields as well as for the folders. Okay, I don't use this, so it's different. Watch folders, you can, as I mentioned earlier, you can pick and choose the kind of folders that you want this to watch for. So it has got all this information in here.
Yeah, I would like to, Raja, I would like to add, I think watch folder allows it to kind of keep searching for similar kind of papers within that type of a folder which you have identified as watch folder. I think so. I don't really remember. I think that is what it is.
No, it's like this. Any new PDF file in these folders will be imported into Mendeley automatically.
Oh,
that's a watch folder.
Okay. That's a watch.
So it doesn't have to search for anything. If I've got only,
if you
as soon as I download something and
if you save it there, it will get uploaded.
Yeah, it will get uploaded. So rather than manually doing it, it does it automatically within that particular folder. So the other thing is, for example, if you are into this document details of what you get in here, say the journal articles, you can pick and choose what kind of fields do you want it to be shown in. There are many such options in here. And similarly, if it is a book, what should be shown in? How this will be reflected is, I'll just cancel this. If I choose a particular, say, I go in here, if I choose a particular paper, I get certain fields here. And these may not be everything. So if you want to add further, what should I do? I can go in and pick and choose in here. Similarly, for the books, I've got specific for the books, different entries in here for the books. I can pick and choose what kind of options do I want to see here, and that can be included. So it is more something that is customizable by a researcher in order to identify what should be included, what should not be included. And it again goes by, the different requirements of the journals. For example, in certain journals, what they would say is, for the books, ISBN number is required, whereas for the research papers, DOI would be required. In certain cases, if you have got an entry, like if you're having a web page, for example, in that case, what you need to do is you need to state about when was this accessed and the URL for it. So that has to be included as part of your citation. So all this could be included in here. Okay, so that's customizable. Anything else? Yeah, you got a trash folder. You all understand what this is. You can create groups, share them, libraries. I think the others are similar with what Mr. Nitin has gone through with respect to the Zotero. The other option is for syncing between the desktop version to the cloud version. So you can sync them from this. So you can, specifically, otherwise you can schedule it in order to sync it. Import exports, all these other, you can sign out as well. So this is my sign in that I use it everywhere. So I can sign in also. Otherwise, I think I've covered all other options. I've covered the citation style is what is very, very important actually. And that's what we typically use in various cases. And the other good thing is they also have a support. So if you are facing some issues within the Mendeley software, you can raise a ticket with them. Definitely they would respond back for. Okay, any questions before I pass it on back to Mr. Nitin? Any questions? Okay, I guess no. Let me pass it on back to you.
Good. I think Raja, wonderful. This is good. People get exposed to two different options. Generally in life, having options is both a good thing and a bad thing. It gets you a little confused, especially if the options are very similar, because please understand, Zotero and Mendeley are meant to do the same things, except that obviously they are like two different softwares, almost at the same level.